Hello everybody, welcome to Catherine Sews. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm super excited today because even though it's the middle of summer, I'm actually starting to plan my fall wardrobe, and I want to make just a beautiful little capsule wardrobe, mainly to take with me on our trip to Montreal and Toronto. I want to make a travel wardrobe that packs really easily, unpacks beautifully, and all goes together nicely. So I'm starting today with a pair of knit trousers that I'll be able to wear now and throughout the winter. So I've got two things that I'm trying today that I've never tried before. One of them is a Supplex knit. And so I got this Supplex knit. It's just beautiful, like really a nice weight. It's gonna make fantastic trousers. I got this from a dead stock company here in the Vancouver area. It's called Our Social Fabrics. It is a non-profit Canadian owned retail store here in Vancouver, but then they have a great online store. Now, unfortunately, they don't ship outside Canada. They ship all across Canada, so you can order from their website anywhere in Canada, but for my American friends, I looked online and I found something similar, which actually looks exactly the same to me, from a store in Los Angeles. Now, it's not dead stock, but if I do find a dead stock option in the US, I'll also add that into the description. For my Canadian friends, yes, I will definitely link to Our Social Fabrics because it's amazing what they save from going into the landfill. This fabric would have been just chucked by the company that originally used it, and dead stock companies rescue that and put it to good use, selling it at a discount to people who love fabrics like you and me. So I got 2 meters of this, and this charcoal is the fabric of the month from Our Social Fabrics. So it's half price right now through the month of August. And for the months of August and September, they're giving Catherine Sews viewers 10% off. When you order online, if you use the code CatherineSews10, you'll get 10% off your order. Now, the second thing that I'm going to try for the first time is a pair of trousers from a website I've never tried before. So the pattern that I just printed off is from a company called Dressmaking Amore. They have some really cute patterns. This is the Jade Pant. This pattern comes in a really nice size range of extra small to 4XL. This pattern was $17 for the PDF. That's $17 Canadian. So I think I'm going to pre-wash this fabric right now while I prepare that pattern, because if it doesn't wash up well, then it's not going to do for my capsule wardrobe. So I'm going to throw this into the washing machine and the dryer. It's got to be able to survive kind of normal washing, otherwise it's not going to be great for my travel wardrobe. So while I do that, I'm going to prepare this pattern. So I know some people don't love using PDF patterns, so I'm going to give you a couple of tips of how to just piece them together a little bit less painfully. It's not that bad. To get the pattern to print, it just wouldn't print for me from Adobe, so I had to take the size that I wanted and drag it onto my desktop, and then use open with preview, and then it would print for me without any problem. So I did print this page first with the test square, and I selected the A4, and it worked out perfectly. It is 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. There are lines around all 4 sides. You don't have to cut all those lines. I cut the right side and the bottom so that I've got paper to tape it to, and so that it's half the cutting. But I'm just paper clipping a bunch together and then cutting on the bottom and the right side. Also, I'm going to test out those pants in this fabric. Do you remember this? I made just a really simple t-shirt from this recently. It's so soft and comfy. So that'll just be a cute little set for the summer, and it'll be my test garment for the Jade pants. Okay, so I'm going to start the wash and start the taping. And then it's easy to just overlap your lines. This one seems to be going together really nice and accurately. And you know what? I'm going to put a link to one of these tape dispensers in the description. Because if you do a lot of these PDF or gift wrapping or anything where you want to have one-handed use of your tape, you got to get one of these. So yeah, all of my tools are linked in the description. And that really is a favorite. I just tape together all of the strips, just like a quilt, right? Piece together all of the strips,
and then put the strips together. And then with paper scissors, I can cut out all of my pieces. Good, so I'm getting these easily out of one length of the pant plus the waistband. And this is a size large. So anything from probably an extra large and down, you'll just need one length. For anything above an extra large, you might need 2 lengths. I'm not going to cut the pocket for these test pants. I just want to whip these up really quick. Okay, so I'm heading to the serger.
Okay, so whipping these up on the serger was lightning fast. I just did them entirely on the serger. The only thing I haven't done is finish the hem, and there's still half an hour left on the dryer for my real fabric. I'm normally a medium, but I chose the large according to the measurements on the size chart, and they're too big. I definitely would be fine with the medium. I think that the sizing chart is a little misleading. That might make sense if this was a pattern for woven fabrics, but this is a pattern that's meant for knits. They're also about 3.5 inches too long for me. And one thing I definitely want to do is make the waistband not so high. I just want to have it the width of the elastic I'll be using plus seam allowance. This is a nice elastic that I just have, and it's just 1.25 inches wide. I don't want the waistband to be loose around that elastic. With 1.25 inches on the fold, so that's 2.5. I think I'll cut the waistband just 3.5 inches wide instead of the 5 inches that it is. So I'll be taking a good 1.5 inches off of the waistband.
So I reprinted and retaped the pattern, and now I've got the medium. It didn't print up as accurately. There were a couple of the circles missing, but it seems like it's fine. And so I've made the pattern piece 3 inches shorter, made the waistband just 3.5 inches wide. Everything else is good to go. The medium is barely fitting side by side on this fabric, the Supplex. I think that the bamboo that I tried the tester on was a little bit wider. So I don't think you'd fit the large side by side on this Supplex. And now, since I am doing the pocket this time, there's one more thing I need, which is a strip of interfacing to go along that pocket opening. So I'll cut my interfacing 7 inches or 18 centimeters long, and I think I'll do about 1 inch wide or 2.5 centimeters. So there's my little strip of tricot interfacing. I use tricot. It's just so nice with knits because it is a knit itself. So you can see my tiny notches for the pocket opening. The interfacing goes evenly over those, extending past both of them evenly. Now, I don't usually interface this pocket opening, but there is a very quick, nice tutorial about the Jade Pants that's going to go way faster than I'm going, and they put interfacing. They also do one more neat little trick that I'll show you that I think is a really good addition for a beginner to sew this kind of side seam pocket. So now my first sewing step is the pocket. And so there are 3 notches along the side seam here. It's the first 2 that I want. And I thought I should point out that this Supplex is a double knit. It's almost the same on both sides, but I think the one side that's a little more heathered, like where it shows a little more the light gray, I think that that is the right side, and that is the side I'll be using. I got the interfacing ironed on to the wrong side of the fabric at the pocket, and now I can just pin the pocket on, and I'm going to pin at both notches. One there and one there. I'm just going to be sewing from pin to pin. Because of that interfacing, this edge is going to stretch a little bit less than the pocket layer. So anytime you're sewing something that's stretchy to something that's not so stretchy, it's good to have the less stretchy side facing up. So even though I'm pinning it this way so that I can see the pocket, I'm going to be flipping it over and sewing with the interface side up, and again just from notch to notch, and staying really nicely at my sewing guideline, which is for me going to be the 15 line, 15 millimeters from the needle, which is almost exactly 5/8 of an inch. A little bit more than the seam allowance that's given on the pattern. And for the rest of the seams, I'll probably take less. I might even do it just on the serger. But for this side seam, when I'm doing a pocket like this, I really do like to have that 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. And with this much stretch, I'm seriously not going to mind losing a tiny bit of fabric from the pant. Okay, let's go to the machine. On a little scrap here, I'm just testing out my regular universal needle and my regular polycotton thread. And a regular straight stitch. And all of that seems to be just working fine. That's great. I did give that a little bit of a stretch while I was sewing so that I can stretch it again later. So really nothing special is required. For the pocket, I'll start at that top notch and sew until the bottom notch. And you do need to have a little bit of accuracy here. You really don't want to go above or beyond either one of those notches. I'm just going to pull out a little bit of thread so that I can hold it for the first few stitches. And bam, right to that second notch. So now at those notches, I continue the notch and snip right to my last stitch. Right there like that. Good. Good. And now you want to understitch that pocket. So to understitch this, I've got the seam allowance coming off to the right, pull the pocket facing or one of the pocket pieces over top, bring this little cutout out so that I can see exactly where I'm starting. And I want to just sew 1 millimeter or 2 on this side through all 3 layers. So starting at the top with a little back tack. And now my job is just to make sure that that seam allowance doesn't flip over. See it right here? The under layer is flipping over. I could feel that and it would give me a funny edge. So I've got to keep that all the way over and open like this. Flip that little corner out so I know where to end. So that little understitch just gives you such a good edge. If your corner looks like this or it doesn't really want to come out, it just means you need to extend your little snip a tiny bit more. Oh, there. There, now my corner comes out nice. Good, good. Beautiful. Now, I usually edge stitch right here. She doesn't in her tutorial, but I think I just might. And you know what? I like the solid feeling. Having that interfacing in there is really, really good. I don't usually do that either, but I think that it is nice to have a more substantial edge. If I'm going to top stitch this edge, I want to just be top stitching here, but I don't want to show a back tack. So what I do is I do the back tack in the seam allowance and come out and pivot. So as long as I've got enough space here, because I need to be able to sew this edge later. So if it's only little, I can't quite take up any with the back tack, but here I think I'll be okay. So a little back tack. And then pivot and come down. And I'm going to leave that toe hanging over the edge. This all sitting nice. And leave the needle down to pivot and do my back tack again, hidden in the seam allowance. Good, so that's the edge of my pocket. I think that looks nice. Good, good. Okay, 2 pockets, looking good. All right, so now the inside pocket piece goes on. So with those in place, understitched and top stitched, they just look so nice. And now the other two pieces go on. You sew the pocket to the pant right side together. Then when it flips in, you put your two pocket pieces right side together as well. Ooh, and it looks like I've got an extra little cut there. Did not notice, but that's okay. It's going to get caught into my seam allowance. Now, what you want to make sure here is that this edge stays even. If this one creeps in a bit, you don't end up with enough seam allowance at your side seam there. This basically is your new side seam edge that should be nice and even. And then from here on in, I'm going to be doing mostly serging. Now, if you don't have a serger, no problem at all. You can just sew and then zigzag your edge, or do a second line of a straight stitch. That works too on a knit. And truth be told, this suplex is never going to run, so you will be actually okay if you don't even finish your edges. But that always just feels a little insecure to me. I think some treatment on the edge is always a good idea. Okay, so I'm going to run to the serger and we're just going to go around the edges of the pocket. You don't go through all the layers, just these two layers.
If you're just serging without sewing first, that's no problem. You just need to make sure you are definitely catching both edges, or else you're going to have a hole in your pocket. Okay, both pockets are nicely serged, looking fine. Okay. Now, I honestly usually just go right to the next step, which is putting the side seams together. And on the tutorial from Dressmaking Amour, they give such a nice little tip, and that is to sew these edges together first to give yourself a guideline for when you're sewing your side seam. And I think that is such a helpful thing, especially if you've never sewn this kind of side seam pocket before. So I've got everything lined up nicely. All three layers are together there now. I think I will change to a long stitch length, just in case it does show. I can pull it out later, and I won't do back tacks here. But I want to aim to come right in close to that corner. So just there. And then at the top, and again, it's three layers all coming together. I'm starting at that little cutout corner there. So both sides just like that, where you're giving yourself a guideline, because when you sew your side seam, I always just do it by feel, where I can feel that edge and feel the corner, but this will be much easier if I can actually see that line of stitching.
So now, on their tutorial, they sew the side seam next, and you totally can do that. What they do is the side seam and the inseam, and then it's the old one leg inside the other to sew the crotch seam. I actually prefer, for me and for my students, I prefer to put the right sides back together again. And in fact, yes, I could have done this right from the start, sewn this curve and then gone to my pocket. But at this point, I'm going to just go to the serger and serge both curves, the center front and the center back crotch seam. Then we'll come back and do the side seam.
Good, so that gives a beautiful stretchy seam, so pro, looks good.
So now I want to lay the back down on the table, right side up. And the front goes right down onto it, right side down. So you're bringing them right side together. And then I'm going to clip the whole side seam. So I've got a hip notch here. I'm going to clip together all the corners and notches. There's a notch halfway down the leg, and then bottom corners. You can definitely clip in between as well. So now I think I'm going to go down one side and do the whole inseam and then back up the other side. But it's the same idea, pinning matching points.
and then pinning in between. Okay, and then back to the serger. Actually, no, not at the serger quite yet because of this side seam pocket. So without the pocket, yeah, I would just go straight to the serger, but I really want to be super precise here and sew exactly on that guideline. So at least for the two side seams, I will sew first. And now can you see what I mean? How that little stitch makes this side seam pocket so much easier. I learned just to score a line with your thumbnail, and that works just fine, but I think having this little line does make it a lot easier. And then I definitely want edges together here. And if I'm worried about sewing the pocket, I can just push it out of the way. No problem. There, and then I'm right back onto that guideline. And then back up the other side, because I like to have the front of the pant leg facing up and the edge on my right. So like starting at the bottom on this side. Oh yeah, that looks good, right? Okay, I'm happy. All right, let's go to the serger now. Okay, so now with the front side facing up, and I can tell it's the front because it's got the pocket on it. So it's down one side, and then the inseam, and then up the other side seam. And I can chain them together. I'll serge around the bottom of both hems, and I want to push these seam allowances to the back. And how I know which way the back is because I had the front side facing up when I was serging. So if I have the good side of the serging facing up now, then I know my seam allowance is going toward the back. So I just look for that good side of the serging where you can see the two needle threads. So that just needs to get a machine sewn hem. While I'm here at the serger, I'm just going to take that waistband and serge the little center back seam of that. Good. So now I've got my elastic. I've cut it comfortably snug around my waist, and I'm overlapping and a bit of back and forth till it's nice and strong. And then the seam of the waistband is the back, so I'll put the seam of the elastic there as well. Fold that in half and clamp seam to seam. And this pattern already has a quarter marking done for you. I like that. So find the next set of notches and clamp or pin. And I forgot to give myself a little notch right at the fold. Okay. And then I'm just going to sew around this edge. I don't want to catch the elastic. So I've got a decent amount of seam allowance there. As long as I'm sewing at about the edge of my presser foot, I should be all right. I want to keep my edges together as I make my way around. It's all ready to go in.
Pants are inside out. My pockets are coming this way, so I know this is my front. So now the waistband goes inside the circle of the waist of the pants, and my seam goes to the center back seam. My next set of notches goes to the side seam. And then notches to the center front and side seam. So one pin in between each section with that little bit of extra fullness divided more or less evenly. And then we're just going to serge around.
Starting at the center back here. And I want to cover that first line of sewing. That means that these two little notches on the presser foot, I want to get that left hand notch to follow my line of stitching or be a bit above it so that that line of stitching doesn't end up showing. And I can give a little bit of a stretch as I go. So the whole waistband is serged on, but that looks pretty good, hey? Excellent. So all there's left to do is the hem. And then I'm just sewing around using that serged edge as my guide and a little stretch as I go. Both legs like that. Couple more things. One is that the tutorial from Dressmaking Amour says to sew a line right in the seam of the waistband just to hold the elastic flat so that it can't fold after a couple of wearings. I think that's a really good idea. So it's really not noticeable when you do it right in the seam. But I think I'll also do a line right at each side seam, even though there's not a seam in the waistband. That looks just fine, and it'll stop the elastic from folding. Just make sure you kind of give it a stretch in both directions so that you know that the elastic is sitting in the right place. The other thing that I don't love is that the pocket opening to me looks a little bit low. Next time I make these, I'll raise it up an inch at the top and shorten it as well by raising it about 1.5 inches at the bottom. But for now, I'm just going to put a little bar tack about 1 inch from the bottom. I don't need the opening as big as it is. So really a bar tack is made using a tight little zigzag. I'm just going to stay on the straight stitch. I'm about 1 inch from the bottom. The pocket is sitting nice, all closed up. And just stitch back and forth a couple of times. And then that, I think, looks purposeful, and I think it'll make that pocket opening sit a bit better. There, just like that. And I could have just sewn on top of the top stitching as well. That would be fine too. Either way is okay. Okay, a final press at the hem and up the side seams. Okay, you know what that means. We are done.
Okay, do you know what? I had jeans on while I was making these pants, and as soon as I put these pants on, I thought, well, I'm never wearing jeans again. These are so much more comfortable, and they're going to travel well. They're going to wash up great. Next time I will raise up that pocket, just that inch at the top, 1.5 inches at the bottom, but it's certainly not a deal breaker for these ones. They are still coming with me anytime I travel. They are just completely versatile. They feel fantastic. This is going to be a good one and a great start to my capsule wardrobe. So all the links will be in the description, so check that out. All my tools are always there. And of course, this pattern and the tutorial from Dressmaking Amour will also be linked below. Okay, so that's it for this week. So until next time, you take care.